The mansion sat like a monument to secrecy at the edge of the Georgia plantation, its shutters crooked, the porches sagging with age, and the air around it thick with whispers of lives long governed by fear. Even as the sun dipped toward the horizon, shadows stretched across the polished floors, and dust motes floated in shafts of fading light, giving the impression that the house itself was alive, breathing in anticipation, remembering every clandestine step, every hushed conversation that had once filled its rooms. Locals spoke of the mistress in tones of equal awe and terror, a woman whose outward charm and refinement masked a terrifying capacity for control. Her reputation, cultivated over years of careful observation and meticulous behavior, carried an almost mythic quality, graceful, elegant, and deadly in her ability to bend those around her to her will. Inside, the air was heavy with the scent of waxed floors, aged wood, and the faint tang of iron, a remnant of countless secrets, of lives orchestrated without consent. The house's corridors stretched like veins through the body of the estate, and each creak of the floorboards, each whisper behind closed doors, was a heartbeat in the silent life of the mansion. Objects were placed with precision, carpets smoothed, curtains drawn just so. Every corner, every room, was a reflection of the mistress's obsessive need for order and the quiet power she exercised over all who lived beneath her roof. Outside, moss-draped oaks whispered in the evening breeze, their shadows stretching across fields that had once echoed with the labor of slaves, a silent witness to a world structured by dominance and obedience, where secrecy and fear intertwined with everyday life. Even before the story could be told, the sense of foreboding was palpable. The mistress moved through the halls with a grace that commanded attention. Her presence, felt in every glance, every gesture, every subtle command. To the world beyond the plantation, she was the epitome of propriety. Within these walls, she was a force that orchestrated lives, wielding fear and fascination as instruments of her control. Every footstep, every murmur, every flicker of light through a window became a part of her dominion, and the mansion itself seemed to pulse with her unspoken authority, a silent accomplice in the hidden events that would define not just her life, but the lives of generations to come. From the day she arrived at the plantation as a young bride, the mistress carried herself with a poise that demanded attention. Yet beneath the surface, a keen intelligence constantly assessed every corner of the estate she would one day dominate. Her husband, often absorbed in business matters and the social expectations of his station, left her largely to navigate the sprawling mansion alone. Portraits of ancestors stared from the walls like silent juries, observing her every step, while the corridors echoed the rhythm of a household poised delicately between order and chaos. She moved with purpose, learning quickly that power often lay not in confrontation, but in subtle manipulation, in the shaping of perception, in the quiet assertion of dominance over both the living and the unseen forces that governed the estate. Isolation sharpened her mind, revealing the opportunities hidden behind the facades of privilege and propriety. Society demanded that she remain graceful, charming, and obedient to conventions that suffocated her ambition. Yet within the mansion's walls, she cultivated her own domain, a private theater of influence where her authority was absolute. The servants learned quickly. Obedience was less about fear of punishment and more about the invisible weight of expectation. Every glance, every gesture, every whispered instruction reinforced her control, bending human behavior to her meticulous design. She was both admired and feared, a figure whose elegance masked a calculating mind capable of orchestrating life itself. Her marriage, though socially advantageous, left her unfulfilled, a structure that provided status but imposed limits. Resentment and desire intertwined, fueling a deeper need to exert control where it could not be resisted. In the quiet corners of the mansion, she discovered the true extent of her influence, learning to manipulate not only the household's operations, but the very lives of those bound to it. In her hands, family, obedience, and loyalty became tools, objects to be arranged, disciplined, and directed according to her will. It was here, in the hidden architecture of daily life, that the seeds of a darker plan took root, a design that would shape the lineage, loyalty, and fate of everyone who dwelled beneath her roof. The mistress's ambition extended into the most intimate realms of her household. With a careful, almost surgical precision, she selected the men who would father her children, each choice guided by a blend of observation, temperament, and suitability for her designs. Months of subtle manipulation preceded any act. A carefully granted privilege, a whispered suggestion, a test of obedience that revealed character and compliance. In this world, consent was a malleable concept, reshaped by fear, hierarchy, and the invisible pressures she applied with unerring skill. The men, conditioned by social norms and the rigid structure of the plantation, seldom realized the full scope of her intentions, their roles dictated by circumstances beyond their comprehension. For the mistress, children were not simply offspring, they were instruments, living proof of her ability to control lineage and bend life itself to her will. Each birth was orchestrated with meticulous care, timing chosen to avoid observation, and every detail arranged to preserve secrecy. The household became a theater of shadows, with servants moving as silent participants, enforcing discretion through both fear and loyalty. The husband, comfortably oblivious upstairs, remained untouched by these hidden realities, his authority a façade beneath which true dominion quietly flourished. The process left psychological imprints on all involved. The men, though manipulated, often felt a vague sense of duty or inevitability, an unease they could neither name nor resist. Servants, aware of the power dynamics and fearful of missteps, navigated a landscape of coercion and obedience, balancing survival against complicity. And above all, the mistress herself maintained an unbroken calm, a presence so controlled that even the most observant could not decipher the full extent of her influence. In her hands, the creation of life became an act of power, a statement of dominance, a method by which secrecy, obedience, and lineage were intertwined in ways that would ripple across generations. In the dead of night, the mansion became a stage for secrets that no one outside could imagine. The children born in hidden chambers were not merely offspring. They were living proof of the mistress's absolute control, symbols of a dominion that extended into the most intimate corners of life. Their cries, muffled behind heavy doors, echoed faintly through the halls, reaching only those who had learned to obey and serve the household's invisible hierarchy. Each birth was a calculated act, performed with precision, orchestrated in silence, and attended by servants who understood the delicate balance of fear, loyalty, and secrecy that held the household together. These children were immediately absorbed into the hidden order of the estate, their identities cloaked in discretion. They carried with them the burden of secrecy from their very first breath, growing in a world defined by the mistress's authority and the pervasive tension of unspoken truths. Their existence was known only to a select few, each aware that any deviation from the prescribed routine could unravel decades of carefully maintained control. The psychological toll was profound. The children inherited a world where obedience was entwined with fear, where life itself was a construct shaped by manipulation and dominance. Outside the mansion, subtle anomalies fueled whispers among neighbors and visitors. Certain servants appeared and disappeared at odd times. Infants were glimpsed only fleetingly. Rumors lingered in the air, half-formed and dangerous. Within the house, the mistress maintained meticulous oversight, ensuring that even the smallest hint of understanding was managed, contained, or redirected. The children of midnight became both shield and symbol, embodying the mistress's power and the silent terror of her world. Every secret, every hidden life, reinforced the delicate, tense equilibrium of the household, a balance that hung on the invisible threads of fear, obedience, and careful orchestration. Above the mansion's polished floors, the husband moved through a world of oversight, propriety, and social obligation, largely unaware of the intricate manipulations unfolding below. To him, the household was a reflection of order and civility, a space where his authority appeared unchallenged, a carefully maintained image of patriarchal control. Yet beneath his feet, in the shadows of the corridors and behind closed doors, a far more intricate network of dominance had taken root, orchestrated by the mistress with subtle precision and unwavering intent. The house itself became a metaphor for the duality of knowledge and ignorance, with the upstairs representing visible power, and the downstairs harboring invisible authority, secrecy, and coercion. Whether through ignorance, distraction, or tacit complicity, the husband allowed her dominion to flourish. His routine, meals with guests, correspondence, and management of the plantation, kept him removed from the hidden realities of the estate. Each floorboard creak, each whispered conversation, each hidden birth passed unnoticed, swallowed by the illusion of order he carried with him like a shield. And the mistress, fully aware of his presence and absence, leveraged it masterfully. The upstairs became both barrier and camouflage, a place that ensured her actions could continue unobserved, reinforcing the tension between appearance and reality, authority and subjugation. This spatial and symbolic division permeated the household. The servants moved between floors with caution, their actions dictated by fear and obedience, constantly negotiating the presence of a husband who seemed powerful yet was blind to the truth. The mistress herself embodied the paradox, publicly bound by the conventions of marriage, yet privately untouchable, orchestrating life below with a precision that rendered her husband's authority almost irrelevant. In this house of dualities, control existed not in confrontation, but in manipulation, in the invisible web that stretched from the upper corridors to the hidden rooms below, shaping the fates of all who lived within her carefully constructed world. The carefully constructed equilibrium of the household began to tremble, imperceptibly at first, like the faint rustle of leaves before a storm. Small inconsistencies, the lingering glance of a servant, a question asked too pointedly, a misplaced object, started to ripple through the mansion, each one a subtle challenge to the mistress's absolute control. Even the most obedient felt the stirrings of awareness, a sense that the meticulously orchestrated reality was not as stable as it had seemed. Yet fear remained a potent governor, ensuring silence persisted even as the first whispers of understanding spread among those bound to her will. The mistress, ever vigilant, noticed these tremors immediately. She read every hesitation, every furtive glance, every almost audible murmur, interpreting them both as threats and opportunities. Letters, journals, and secret observations circulated quietly among the more perceptive servants, their contents hinting at truths too dangerous to articulate openly. The tension thickened, charged with the weight of secrets teetering on the edge of exposure. Every small slip became a potential crack in the edifice she had so carefully built, yet she moved with calm precision, reinforcing loyalty and fear in equal measure. Outside the walls, subtle clues began to reach observers, though none could name the source. Neighbors noticed inconsistencies, visitors sensed odd absences, and the air of mystery surrounding the mansion grew heavier. Inside, the psychological toll intensified. The children, the servants, even those complicit in her schemes, began to sense the fragility beneath the mistress's calm exterior. The mansion itself seemed to respond, each corridor and chamber echoing with tension, each shadow carrying the weight of impending revelation. In this delicate balance, the mistress remained unchallenged, a force of quiet omnipotence, even as the first seeds of discovery quietly germinated within her carefully ordered world. The fragile web of secrecy finally unraveled, not with a dramatic confrontation, but through the quiet accumulation of overlooked details. Letters left exposed, a servant's confession, whispers that could no longer be contained. The truth spilled into the daylight with a force that shocked the community. The mistress, long regarded as an elegant and controlled figure, had exercised her dominion over life and lineage in ways that defied comprehension. Neighbors, family, and outsiders alike struggled to reconcile the image of genteel propriety with the harrowing revelations now emerging from the mansion's shadows. Testimonies and documents surfaced, laying bare the scope of her manipulation, the coercion of men, the hidden births, the psychological control that had shaped every corner of the estate. The letters, journals, and recollections painted a picture of a woman whose ambition had extended into the most intimate aspects of life, orchestrating events with an artistry that was both brilliant and terrifying. The household, once a model of obedience and calm, was now exposed, its dynamics dissected, debated, and condemned by all who encountered the truth. The mistress herself remained outwardly composed, though beneath her calm lay an acknowledgement of the irrevocable consequences. Her children, once hidden and protected, were thrust into scrutiny, their identities and lives dissected by a world that had finally caught a glimpse of the reality beneath the façade. Servants, long bound by fear, found themselves witnesses to a new order in which their complicity, intentional or coerced, became part of the narrative. Society wrestled with moral outrage, fascination, and disbelief, struggling to understand the depth of secrecy and domination exercised quietly within the mansion's walls. Even after the initial shock passed, the impact lingered. The story of the house, the Mistress, and her orchestrated progeny became legend, a cautionary tale whispered among those who sought to understand how power, secrecy, and manipulation could intertwine to produce consequences that spanned generations. The scandal had exposed not only the actions of one woman, but the fragility of appearances, the hidden cost of dominance, and the long shadow that control exercised in silence could cast over history itself. The scandal that had once ripped through the plantation settled like a dense fog, leaving in its wake a legacy that reached far beyond the immediate household. The children, whose births had been meticulously concealed, now carried the weight of revelation into their own lives, confronting questions of identity, parentage, and legitimacy that could not be ignored. Bloodline disputes arose, families fractured under the pressure of historical truths, and descendants struggled to understand a past they had never known. The mistress's influence had not ended with her death. It persisted in the very fabric of the lives she had manipulated, shaping futures in ways both subtle and profound. Psychological scars left by secrecy and coercion extended across generations. Children raised in fear and obedience now faced a world in which their existence had been disclosed, their identities reframed by knowledge of the manipulation that had defined their earliest moments. Trust, love, and familial bonds were complicated by the awareness of hidden truths, and the weight of inherited trauma became an inescapable part of their lives. The household, once a site of absolute control, had transformed into a landscape of reflection, memory, and unresolved tension, where every descendant reckoned with the consequences of choices made in silence. Genealogists and historians later pieced together fragments of evidence, reconstructing the breadth of her control and the impact it had on the plantation and its people. Each revelation reinforced the enduring influence of her actions, illustrating the ways in which a single life, exercised with determination and secrecy, could echo across time. The house itself, empty and overgrown, became a symbol of dualities: authority and ignorance, visibility and secrecy, obedience and trauma. Its walls seemed to remember the footsteps, whispers, and hidden lives that had once moved within, a silent witness to a past that refused to be buried. In the end, the legacy of shame was more than scandal. It was a reflection on the enduring consequences of human ambition and the invisible chains of control that can extend beyond a lifetime. The mistress's dominion, exercised with precision and secrecy, left traces that could never be erased, shaping the moral, emotional, and social landscape for generations to come. Her story, as dark and mesmerizing as the house itself, remained a haunting testament to the power of secrecy, the complexity of human desire, and the ways in which history remembers those who bend life to their will. Long after the scandal had faded from immediate memory, the mansion remained a silent witness to the events that had unfolded within its walls. Upstairs and downstairs, the symbolic divide endured, the realm of authority above, the realm of secrecy below, each echoing the choices, fears, and control that had defined the household. Footsteps, once deliberate and full of intent, seemed to linger in the corridors. Whispers, long silenced, appeared to echo faintly in empty rooms. The house itself bore the weight of memory, a monument to both ambition and frailty, a structure in which power had been exercised in secrecy and silence, leaving indelible marks on all who had lived there. The mistress, though gone, left an imprint that reached far beyond the mansion. Her children, the servants, and the very bloodlines she had manipulated carried forward the consequences of her actions. The upstairs husband, oblivious in life, and the downstairs world of obedience and secrecy had together created a paradox that history would remember, that dominance maintained in silence shapes more than the immediate. It shapes generations. The house, now overgrown and still, seemed to exhale with the weight of its memories, a living relic of ambition, control, and hidden horrors. In the final contemplation, a haunting truth emerges. Power exercised quietly, yet completely, leaves echoes that can never be erased. The duality of upstairs and downstairs, of visibility and secrecy, of control and ignorance, stands as a testament to the complex web of human desire, manipulation, and consequence. History, like the mansion, remembers. And within that remembrance lies a story both mesmerizing and unsettling, a story of lives reshaped, identities forged in silence, and the enduring shadow of a mistress who bent the world beneath her to her will.